Hey guys, my name is Max, and this is a Valheim build video. I kind of wanted to jump into doing these small build videos just because I've been having so much fun with Valheim and pretty much all aspects of the game. This right here is more of kind of a minimalistic building that I kind of wanted to go over and kind of give you the layout and my thought process and how I built it and everything to give you guys some more ideas. Obviously, take what I have and make any type of adjustments that you see fit, but it's a great starter home, that you can jump into pretty easily. All right, so let's jump into it. Okay, so first things first, I kind of just wanted to go over the brief material list. I think I used just under 800 wood. That's just the base wood that you can get from beech trees. Then I also went ahead and collected 100 fine wood, which you can get from birch trees. And I just collected, I think, a stack of 20 core wood, which I basically use for only the beams that are inside the structure that will help hold up the main center roof pieces. Give that extra support since you can make longer beams with those. And it's kind of a little bit more decorative too. So with the shopping list kind of out of the way and having a brief understanding of what you'll need for kind of essentially the initial prep work, I went ahead and just step one, flatten the ground. I personally like to flatten things out as much as possible. I know I'm doing a raised structure, so you might not even need to do that, but I like working on as flat as the surface as possible to kick things off. So from there, I usually like to work kind of from the front first. That's how I personally like to do it. I like to try to get that visualization up front. I like to see where the doors are going to be. I like to try to center everything from where I've kind of flattened the ground and also kind of get an idea as to how wide my structure is going to be. Now, because I'm more of a visual person, I personally think that it's the best route to try to sketch something small. I'm not a great artist, but take a blank piece of paper, sketch a couple ideas down, try to get a basis for what you're wanting to accomplish. That way you kind of, when you go to actually start building it, it kind of, I guess, lines up a bit better with kind of the core elements and physics of the game. If you know the materials up front, it probably will help you kind of plan out exactly what you're going to do. So for here, you can see I started with just the front portion, start kind of with how the door is going to line up, the entry point, and then the front kind of porch little overhang. Another pivotal aspect that you kind of could see me doing initially was ensuring that I'm putting the foundation pieces that are connected to the ground. If you're not familiar with the mechanic in Valheim, it works basically like there's like a stress level. So if you have just one piece set up and it's just kind of floating in the air, and if you put a bunch of weight on that going to the left or the right or up, it's going to start creating stress. And it basically goes with a color system. So green is blue is your complete grounded piece, and then it goes to green, and then I think it's like a lighter green, then orange, then red. And if you get to red, basically anything that you try to put onto a red piece, it will no longer allow you to build on. It will just automatically break. So the idea is that you want to try to make things as grounded as possible. So you can see I'll randomly be putting kind of these little foundation blocks all around the house to ensure that I'm kind of getting and starting from a really good support standpoint. And here, I like to build a couple ladders to try to give me good pivot points and placement points for for all the building materials, rather than trying to worry about climbing and potentially falling off the roof. So that's just like a little side tip. I'm sure most people already know, but it's definitely something that I had to learn initially. But another neat and kind of fun little trick that I just started implementing on some of my other buildings is being able to put ladders going up on the side or on the exterior of the house, and they kind of go along with the beams, and so that way you have access to your roof through a ladder without having to try to like use a bunch of your stamina to get to the top, which is really helpful for just overall building. Yeah, you'll definitely notice later on in the video when I start creating the fire smokestack. It's super helpful to have those ladders up there rather than trying to either, like I said, balance in the middle or use your stamina to get up to the top. You have those like little points to climb up, which is really nice and very helpful. Also, just wanted to kind of point out that it's very difficult to try to create constant video all during the day to give you really good lighting on what I'm doing here. So bear with me through the night or kind of like the dusk shots. I didn't really have much choice, and I tried to fast forward, do like sleep through the nights and whenever it started kind of getting dark, and then come back during the day so you guys could see things more clear. But just like I said, just bear with me as I kind of go through this. Also, I think I forgot to highlight kind of in the beginning when I was going over the checklist about the stone that I needed, and that's kind of required for the build. There's gonna be a lot of times where even if you flatten the ground out as much as possible, there's still gonna be these little high and low like divots. And like I mentioned before, you need everything to be as grounded as possible. So you're going to end up having to raise the ground or lower the ground in certain areas, and you're going to need the stone in order to do that. So having that on hand, I don't think that I ended up going through all of it, but just having it on reserve is nice. Once again, have all your materials up front. That's less, running back and forth into the forest and having to basically change things or get materials after the fact. So at this point, I'm busting up the floor to make way for the core wood beams to go all the way up to help support the roof and how high it's going to end up going. This is that I was talking about earlier, where once again you have to have everything grounded, but the core beams they're so much longer than the other ones, so it helps with the higher roofs. And also from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks nicer in my opinion, especially for it being in the interior of your home. So the one big thing with that in mind is you always want to try to think about where your fire source is going to be whenever you start one of these projects. Vast majority of the time, I put mine in the center for some reason. I don't know. I just think that it's like that's where it needs to go. But I plan on doing some other builds where it's not in the center, and I want to create cool chimney stack off to the side. I think that'd be fun to mess around with. But for the sake of this building, I'm planning on putting a center fire piece that's going to bellow the smoke straight up. So I'm trying to keep in mind where I want my vents, so that way you don't have smoke that piles up inside your home and then you walk in and you can't see anything because it's just filled with smoke. So definitely keep that in mind as you're kind of going through your build process and what you have in mind for where the fire is going to be. So this house in particular, I consider it kind of like a slightly bigger portal house. I call them like portal houses, but it's basically, I have a bunch of these because there's so much exploration within the game that you can do that you don't always want a giant base wherever you go, right? So I create these little portal houses, and I plan on making a video of one of my smaller builds, but this is kind of I would consider this like more of like your like larger scale portal house. It's not a huge, Viking home. And I'll have to showcase my actual main base on another video, but this is just kind of an idea as to if you want an area where you can like sleep, store stuff, you know, get comfort level higher. That way, you know, you can build stamina, you know, and run through areas easier without having to constantly portal back to your main home. This is, I think, just like it's a good, just all around kind of small portal house, basically. Another nice thing about having one of the smaller houses, one of these like smaller portal houses, is that you can build comfort level easier. You have, everything's more confined, and for those who don't know, comfort transitions into rested. Rested is a type of state when you're near a fire and you have a certain comfort level, you'll have a certain amount of rested state, and when you're rested, you get like 200% stamina. I don't know everything off the top of my head, but it's like I know you get a ton more stamina, regeneration or something like that, and it's basically just overall, if you can get into the rested state and stay there, it's going to make exploring a lot easier. It's going to be make fighting bosses and enemies a lot easier. So the idea of having consistent uptime on rested is kind of like your ultimate goal, kind of, for especially just doing anything in Valheim. And so by having this smaller house, one thing I kind of found with having these bigger bases, yes, they're more elaborate, they're cooler to show off and everything, and the complexity level is higher, but you find that in my bigger base currently, there's like one spot where you get this amazing comfort, you know, point, and I have to like stand there for a couple of seconds, and then I get the rested state bonus. Whereas in a smaller house like this, you can pretty much just be anywhere in the home and you'll get that same rested. So it's just, everything's just more condensed. You don't have to have a ton of furniture pieces all over in order to develop that. It's just an easier way to get the comfort. All right, so now just kind of doing mostly just the finishing touches on the rest of the house. There isn't a whole lot left to the build. We're getting close towards the end. You can see here, once again, it's trial and error, right? I'm just trying to make it look aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Having the beams go all the way down to the ground, I feel like adds that extra kind of Viking element to the houses. So I try to do it where I can and where it makes sense, you know, not trying to force anything. And then obviously you want to start putting on the finishing touches, make sure everything's kind of grounded, so that way it looks, you know, everything kind of structurally makes sense. Here, I kind of like having the natural kind of light coming through. You don't have to worry about when it rains, the rain actually coming into the building. It's just not how the physics of the game works. So you can kind of not even have to worry about that aspect. And even on the fly like this, you can make adjustments, you know. This from the video, from the picture of the building in the intro portion, I made slight modifications to this one. Just really slight things that I thought would make, I guess, for just a better overall house. So every time you do one of these builds, you can tweak it a little bit, you know, make things just slightly different. But now I'm just kind of, once again, just putting these finishing touches. I'm gonna make sure everything looks clean. I like to put the boards at the bottom of the kind of like the frame, so it doesn't look exposed. It looks kind of like it's finished, a nice finished look to it. But this is pretty much it. Now, I didn't include the interior furniture pieces into the material list because I figure you can deck it out however you see fit. But that's going to do it from me. If you have any recommendations, further advice, tips, or just general comments, I'd love to hear them. But until next time, catch you guys on the flippity flip.